Hello, everybody. I am Strati Papa Georgiou,
And this is Father Michael Tischel.
and we are
An Imperfect
Podcast.
Cast
Hey.
Pod.
Wow.
Oh,
I
podcast.
thought we finally got it right.
Almost. That was so close, Strati. That was so close. Man. Well, we have a very exciting...
No. Cue
Oof.
music.
Well, we have a very exciting podcast for you all today. We have a special guest with us who is hailing all the way from Japan, believe it or not. And so we woke him up bright and early in the morning in Japan at 5 a.m. in the morning, I believe. And that is Nikolai Justin Bingham. And so, Nikolai, welcome to An Imperfect Podcast.
Thank y'all very much for having me.
Yeah.
And we are just very excited to have you and to just get to know you a little bit and a little bit more about your story and just have an interesting conversation because what could be more interesting than an American Orthodox in Japan at 5 in the morning, of course, and how you got there and what your life's about. And so we're just excited to dive in.
Thank you. And thank y'all very much for giving me this opportunity.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I kind of want to start it so
start
that
it out.
I can talk about how I got to know Nicolai.
That's a good connection.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
When we were doing Saint Nicholas of Japan, the fellow who recorded it, John, he told me that he knew a guy from Japan and that guy gave John Marshall, correct? Some pictures of like authentic Japanese Orthodox texts that were translated from Russian into Japanese. And then I didn't know who the guy, who this guy from Japan was, right? And then somebody left a comment on the video. Oh, I saw this from forgot Nikolai, this YouTube channel. So I was like, okay. So I looked up and I found this guy. And that's basically how it, and then we started talking and we got to know each other a little bit.
So Saint Nikolai of Japan really brought us all together. That's really what it comes down to.
Basically.
And, the interesting thing with John Marshall, how I got in touch with him was through one of the people at the church. I'm from Tennessee. I'm from Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
And the Orthodox church I went to there is St. Elizabeth's Antiochian church in Murfreesboro. Shout out to St. Elizabeth. Shout out to Father John and everybody. Love y'all. And John was the friend of one of the daughters of the priest there, Father John Oliver. And I think he hit me up for something, and he said, "Yeah, I'm doing this thing with TrisagionFilms about Saint Nicolai." I was like, "Yo, bet, okay, I got you." And I sent him those pictures, and then that's how through God's grace all this happened.
Nice.
But before that, I want to tell y'all some things that may be interesting. I don't know. So, like I said, I'm from Tennessee, and I come from a very I guess what's a good way to say this, faithful family, in particular, like my daddy, like my mama too, but in particular, like my daddy. And like my dad would read the Bible every night, still does. And would like my dad kind of talks to me in two ways, either through movie quotes, which is a whole nother conversation. Like my family, we don't talk properly. We basically refer to each other via movie quotes, right? Or constant biblical references. And my dad will kind of just like make biblical references and then just kind of like, you know what that's from? So please ask his daddy. Yeah. It's like that's the part when Jesus says this, yeah, daddy, yeah, I know. But the interesting thing with that is where my dad got that from. Because I remember y'all did about, I don't exactly know the date, but like maybe within the last month, y'all did the thing about race relations. And I was most certainly going to mention that during this. And one of the people that gave my daddy his strong faith was the woman that raised him, which technically was his great grandmama, who was the child of slaves. Like her parents were slaves, and so she raised my dad and everybody, but apparently could not read or write. Her like 96 years on this earth, but still impressed on my daddy this incredible like faith. And then there's the stuff that happened to my daddy, and so that kind of gave a base to me of like one of the answers that my daddy always gives is trust in God. Add to that, I guess the lucky circumstances or the blessings under which I was born. So like I was scheduled to be born in December of 1989, but I was born in September, about 3.5 months early, and about like less than a pound was like 700 grams or something like that. So I was, born early. And the story that my mom and dad always tell me, they said to me, they said, like the doctors told him, yeah, Justin probably has like a 5% chance of living. And what my mom and daddy said their reaction was no. Like my daddy said that he kind of looked at that and said, no, God ain't gonna do that to me. And then apparently like my mama started laughing, but the doctor thought she was crying and he tried to console her. But my mom was laughing apparently. So I'm like, there's that, right? And so that kind of gave him this kind of foundation. And then it's like every night, daddy reading the Bible and then talking to me in either Bible quotes or movie quotes. It's, you get used to it. And then what I'm like fast forwarding through a whole bunch of stuff. What brought me to Orthodoxy, because another fun thing, I've been in Japan for like 7 years this time. This is technically my 3rd time in Japan. Okay. But I've been here for 7 years. I have been Orthodox for 8 years. Baptized like 8 years ago. So if you do the math, I have spent 7 years of that 8 years of my Orthodox life in a country that's not Orthodox, right? Which is so fun as you can imagine it would be, especially when you're not like you haven't done a whole bunch of learning. There's still a whole bunch you need to learn about it, and that's fun. Anyway, before I get into that, and then so it was like I started going to an Orthodox church, and I was like, so I'm 30 now, 20 going on 21. And how I started going was because of one of the brothers in my Japanese class in university, was my boy Alex was just in the Japanese class, and he was in the process of transitioning from, I think, being Anglican, his family's sort of Anglican, and into being Orthodox. And at that point, I'd stopped going to church for like years. Like, I was like, I got bored with it. Essentially, like, this is silly. I'm not going. This something ain't right. I ain't going. Right. I'm good. Like when I was in high school, it was like junior high school. Like I started to go to this one Baptist church, and I mean, they were real cool because like they had a bus. They come pick you up. But I was like, I'm not waking up to get on a bus at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now remember that time. Remember me thinking 8 o'clock in the morning is terribly early to go to church. That's gonna be relevant later. So I went for a little bit. I was like, bro, no, thank you. I'm good. I'm not going. I don't care. I'm not going anymore. Right. And then, eventually my boy Alex was like, hey, why don't you come to church with me? And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. No, thank you. I'm good. And he's like, nah, man, come on, you should come with me. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, my faith never really went away. I was just like, I don't want to go to church. And I think around that time, something interesting happened. So I told you my daddy always talks in movies and Bible quotes. And my daddy like knew the Bible. He knew it, like all the books. My daddy was good. And then one day, my granddaddy had there's like a partial house fire at his house. Like something happened at his kitchen. There's a kitchen fire, and everybody was fine, but we were just, went to the house to clean some stuff up and everything.
Mhm.
And in the house there was this old kind of family Bible. It's maybe about from the 1800s or something. And I started looking through it, and I think what was the church call it, the anogignoskima, like the what you would call like the texts that are in the Old Testament that's not, or is it different? I think it's like Tobit or Maccabees.
Oh, Septuagint?
The apocryphal.
Oh,
yeah,
apocryphal?
yeah. I think
Maccabees isn't apocryphal.
no, I heard it.
Well,
No, I
anyway.
don't think it's something different. The start
Is
of
it?
Septuagint, because I heard.
The ones that are not like
Yeah, no.
part of the main canon of scripture.
Yeah, that would be apocryphal.
Yeah. Oh. See,
But
I'm still learning my
Maccabees-
church words.
But
But
Maccabees though is
yeah.
in the Arcana, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
then okay,
Oh,
then it
tell
must
me.
have
I
been
don't
I'm gonna
the
bookmark that.
the Septuagint. But I was going through there, and I started seeing those books in there because this Bible had that. But no, I think in that particular form, it was separated into the Apocrypha.
Sure.
I think was that
Okay,
section.
so there was
Yeah.
elements.
Yeah. And then I started seeing Maccabees, Tobit, and the wisdom of Sirach. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and I always like learning new stuff. I'm like,
Sure.
I ain't seen this before. I was like, Daddy, what is this? And my dad was like, I don't know. And then that kind of made a spark go in my head. I was like, interesting. And then
Something you don't
eventually,
know.
and then eventually my boys like, come to church with me. I was like, okay. And then he kind of warned me in the parking lot. He's like, all right, look, this is a little different. I need you to just do what I do. I was like, okay. And then I remember walking into the church, and there's the incense and everything. And then the first thing I see was this icon of Saint Elizabeth, the New Martyr, the one where she has like the white
Oh yeah.
veil, I think. And
remind me, this is
yeah.
back in Tennessee
yes,
when this is happening. Yeah. Okay.
yes. And forgive me for how I say this, but this was the first thought I had, and I guess to be real with y'all, my first thought was, who is this white lady? Because that's not Jesus and that's not Mary. I'm like, I don't know
Right.
who this white lady is. Who is this? And he said, just do what I do. And he kissed it. I was like, what are you doing? I don't know what this is, man. This is freaky, bro. And then I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was like, bro, what you doing, bro? But no, we went in there, and like I remember after that first service, I went up to Father John and I hugged him. I remember that because I was like, yo, this is, yeah. Like, I don't know what this is, but yeah, and then from there, I went through the process of learning about it. And my family was amazing. My family was like, yeah, if you find a church you want to go to it. And then, kept on going, and actually went to Japan to study abroad during this period. And I found
was that during high school or
the university? This is university.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I was in Fukuoka, which is like on Kyushu, the western big island in Japan. Japan has like 3 big islands: Kyushu, Honshu, and Hokkaido. Kyushu is like the big one on the lower left side if you're looking at the map. And so I went there, and I'm still like in I think you call it the catechumen stage. And I found an Orthodox church relatively close to where I was staying. They met once a month, and it's like, I kind of need to show you the size of my room. The whole of the church was basically the size of the room I'm in right now.
Wow.
And it was like maybe, I don't know, 7 people, 8 people, mostly old people, and that's not an uncommon thing here. And I learned about it, and after that, went back to the U.S., did some more kind of learning at church, got to go to some Bible classes and whatnot, and then eventually got baptized in February, relatively close to St. Nicolai's feast day,
Nice.
in the river, because the font at the church was not working. And then Father was like, hey, you want to do this old school and go to the river? I was like, yeah. that sounds awesome. Let's do that. And then
I mean,
we did that, and then I actually cut my foot on one of the rocks. So it's
Ouch.
like, does that technically count as me bleeding for the faith? I mean, I don't know, but like it's like I cut my foot. Like, yay. No,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, we could spin it and say,
Yeah, no,
Technically.
yeah.
I mean,
Technically, yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry. That's wrong. That's wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah, y'all cut that
Okay,
out.
good.
Cut that part out. Edit that out.
No, this
No,
is
it's
this is
staying
an
in.
imperfect podcast.
Yeah, it's
Nikolai. This is-
imperfect.
Trust me, we've said plenty of things
Perfect.
that.
Now, also, I guess I should mention why I chose Saint Nicolai.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know anything about him at the time, and I was thinking about, okay, Father told me, he's like, all right, well, about to get baptized. I think you should go through and try to find a saint that connects with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had no idea how I found him out, but somehow I found like Saint Nikolai of Japan. I was like, okay, wait a minute, who is this? And then I did a little research on him, and I figured out the depths with which he cared about Japanese people.
Mm.
Because like another thing I guess I should briefly mention is that when I was growing up, our next door neighbors were like American Japanese couple,
Mm-hmm.
and they had, the wife was from Okinawa, and the husband was stationed over there, and they had, I guess when they lived over there, they had collected all of these VHS tapes of Japanese TV that they recorded. And me and my brother would just watch these tapes during the summer. So we started watching a whole bunch of Dragon Ball and all this like anime. And when I was like real little, I had no idea what they were saying, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to go here. And I could never really explain what that felt like. Because if people ask me, why do you like Japan? And to be honest, like I can't tell them why, because there's so much in that initial feeling that drew me here that I
It was a
can't
very
articulate.
like pre-rational kind of
It's
encounter
like
as a kid.
It's like you must go here.
Hmm.
I was like, I have no idea why, but like I have to. It was like a big obsession, and so that kind of got worse and worse as I got older. And then,
So
there was
you
that
went
connection.
and you studied abroad for, was it just a semester?
Yeah, semester in 2010.
Okay.
Which is
2010.
important because the next year after that was that massive earthquake and tsunami that happened.
Wow, yeah.
And I remember watching it. Like I've seen, a whole bunch of disasters, all this other stuff on TV and news coverage, but that was like the one thing I couldn't watch, right? Which is odd now, because like if you talk to my wife, she remembers that because my wife is from Fukushima, and but at that time I'd never heard of Fukushima,
Right.
And so this is kind of, I'm at the point where like I just came back from Japan, like I just realized one of my life goals, like and I'm finding out this saint, really loves Japan and all this stuff. It's like, oh man, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then that disaster happened, and then my university said, okay, we're doing something for the first time with Fukushima University. We're going to get 10 students, because the school I went to, Middle Tennessee State University, MTSU, sorry, we had like 20. You know how people, when they do podcasts and that stuff, they got to do shout outs. I got to do a shout out to all the people, right? Murfreesboro.
I mean, it's entertaining for me.
Well, good. And so, the university at the time had like 24,000, 25,000 students. And they said, okay, we're going to pick 10 people. Didn't have to be anything related to Japanese. We're just going to pick 10 people and send y'all over there to do like a volunteer thing. And so, I volunteered. I kind of wrote my little essay. And one of my friends was a student studying at my university from Fukushima. And she told me about, her family and everything when she was working. Now, she wasn't in Japan when that happened, but, she told me about her family, where her family is. I was like, oh man, okay. That, kind of touched me. And so I did my essay, and thanks be to God, I got to go. And I also have a video that I made of that, because it was kind of like it was also like a final project for me in order to graduate. So they said you could either write a paper or you could do like a final project. And my final project was like a music video thing. It's super horrible now if I look at it, but of that experience. And so we went over there for like 9 days to do the volunteering. And that was like crazy, because that 9 days is the reason why I'm here now. essentially. So it's like we went there and, we drove through like neighborhoods that were just flattened and erased. Because like we were driving through this one place next to like a water reservoir that had been completely filled with like mud and debris. And they said, oh yeah, look over to the right. And it's basically just a green field. They said all that used to be houses.
Whoa.
Like there used to be a whole neighborhood and it was gone. And I remember digging in that reservoir in the mud and pulling out, like I pulled out shirts, pulled out a cassette tape, I pulled out like a purse. And me and one of my friends, because every family did homestays, and me and my friend, I think, were the only two, or one of the only two of that group to stay at one of the temporary houses, which I think hadn't been done before. I don't know. I don't know. That's what they said. And so we went there, and the temporary house is actually really nice. It's really small, but it's actually very nice and well put. And oh man, we drank so much. It was amazing. And that happened. And then one of the creepy things is that we had these dosimeters. So it's maybe about that big, maybe a couple, 5, 6, 7 inches long, as like a little pocket radiation detector.
Oh wow.
And part of that was kind of to prove to people that yeah, there was the radiation, but it wasn't as bad as people were panicking about.
Interesting.
It just so happened that mine was constantly the highest out of everybody's. I was like, well, is mine the highest? I was like, I don't know. It might be your camera. I'm like, bro, that's not funny. It's like, I already think it's broken. Let's give you a new one. And they gave me a new one. And it's like, oh, yours is still a little high, but it's not like in the danger area, but it's like it's a little high. I'm like, okay. Oh, okay. But that happened, and that inspired me to come back. So after that happened, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Fukushima and do something to help. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I found the job there to teach English, and this is I think after I got baptized, because that was 2000. Yes, after I got baptized, because the volunteer was 2012, and I was baptized in February 2012, and this was in like July, and June or July. And I had actually at that time I was given like a little prayer rope when I went there, and so there was this plaque that the emperor had left for all the people, and like I took like my little prayer rope and I kind of just like put it there at the little thing. So yeah, there's that. And then I came back. I was like, okay, how can I get to Fukushima? Okay, I could teach English, right? That's easy way to get to Japan. And
you just had to get to Japan. I mean, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating at the same time.
It gets weirder after I actually got here. It kind of like the way I think of it is God actually shows me why he like pushed me to come here, right? And I'll try to explain this later on, but like God has kicked me in my chest like 3 times at least while I've been here. That's how I describe it. God kicking me in my chest. And it's very obvious when God kicks you in your chest, but I get that in a second. And so it's like, okay, I need to go to Japan. So I decided, okay, I'll teach English. And at the interview for the company, they had like a test, like it's a 2-day interview. And they said, we'll do the spelling test, which I can't spell. I need like Sesame Street to spell. I'm horrible at spelling. And a grammar test. And my spelling was horrible. And they told me, they're like, yeah, like your spelling and everything was horrible. But there's something about you. And this isn't to focus on me. This is more of like a thanks be to God. But it's like, there's something about you. I think you could be a good teacher. We'll let you go. Because I was certain I failed the first day. Like I was certain I failed it. Really? And they said, okay, here's your letter. Like everybody was given an envelope, and they said, go back to your hotel room and open it, and it'll tell you if you make it to the next day or not. And I got to make it to the next day, and I couldn't believe it. And then later on, they said, yeah, you like the technical skills were like really low, but there's something. So like, yeah, we'll let you go.
Interesting.
Lord,
nice.
Thank you. And another thing, when they called me and said, yeah, we found a school for you, because I told them I want to go to Fukushima, and they said that's weird because don't many people want to go there. Well, obviously at the time it's still like the whole radiation thing was like a big scare. And they called me and said, yeah, Justin, we figured out, we have your plane and your flight arrangements, and this is weird. I was like, what's weird about it? You leave March 11th, and the disaster was March 11th, 2011, and I left March 11th, 2013, and when I got to Japan, it was March 12th, but they're like, yeah, man, it's kind of odd. You're leaving on March 11th. I'm like, okay, God, I get it. Okay, something. Okay, I get it. Okay, I get it. And one thing that happened, and y'all can cut me off anytime you want, because there's just a lot that has happened to me here that I don't get a big chance to tell people. Was
yeah, keep going.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay. It was
also
before,
I'm gonna take a picture for Instagram.
Go ahead. So, was one of the a lot of interesting things. Like, for example, back when I went for the first time to Japan during the study abroad, my dad told me, because I'd never been. Oh man, you missed it. Okay. My dad told me that don't worry, you'll be okay. Because I was real nervous about flying. He's like, don't worry, God will send somebody to be with you. I'm like, okay, Dad, whatever. Okay, thanks. And I went on the plane. Right next to me was this super sweet white lady. And she's like, oh, is this your first time flying? I was like, yes, ma'am. And she's like, oh, don't worry, it gets better. And I'm just like, I'm looking at her and thinking, okay, fine. Thank you, Lord. Okay, I got it. Thank you. And then I want to specifically say their names to a couple that has fallen asleep in the Lord before us from St. Elizabeth, and that was John and Lee Glasgow, the fantastic elderly couple that kind of pushed me further into the love of Japan, because I think John, he used to, I think, serve, I think it was the Navy, I think, in Japan for some years, and they lived in Japan for like a couple of years, and they had this huge collection of stuff that they gathered in their house. Like they had Japanese pottery and all this other beautiful stuff. And I remember one day going to church, and the wife, Lee, she told me, it's like, yeah, I have some pictures of me doing ikebana. And ikebana is like Japanese flower arrangement. And I just looked at it, I was like, okay, cool, that's whatever, okay. And that one little conversation is the seed for one of the biggest things that's happened to me so far.
No like, pun intended.
Yeah,
the
right.
Seed,
ha,
right? Yeah.
ha. Yeah, no, yeah.
Arrangement.
And so,
anyway.
The Japanese flower arrangement is amazing, by the way. But I was like, okay, that's cool. And I was like, I wasn't that interested in it, and because I didn't really think much of it. I was just like, okay, that's cool. Thank you for showing me beautiful pictures. And then when I came to Japan, so I was in Fukushima, right? And I was walking down the street one day, and I see this Japanese, really like traditional kind of Japanese style house with the ikebana sign outside, like a little classroom. I was like, oh, that's the thing Miss Lee was talking about. And then that's the day I met my Japanese grandmama. And I look in, and there's this old Japanese lady watering her flowers. And she looks at me, she's like, what you want? and it was essentially like, they said, what you want? I was like, well, ma'am, and sometimes when I get nervous, like my accent gets super, super country. I was like, well, Mrs., I just want to look at the flowers. And she's like, okay, well, come on in. So I went to her house, and I talked to her. I decided to sign up to do the flower arrangement. And that woman, meeting that woman, that's I call her grandmama, like, was essentially the feeling I got from meeting her was essentially like God put the whole of my church family and my family into one person and said, here. Because like, I think I had been there like a year or so prior to meeting her, and it got really like lonely.
Sure.
And because I get very like, anxious and nervous and overthink things. I mean, it could be a product of being born 3.5 months early. I don't know. But, my mind tends to give into like depressive thoughts quite often. And if I'm in a country by myself with not a lot of people to talk to, it doesn't make things better. So meeting her was essentially how it felt like.
You spoke English? And...
No, not at all.
Okay. So you can hear in Japanese.
Yeah, because she constantly reminded me, during the war, we couldn't speak English.
Right.
Because she's, how old is she now? She's like 88 now. Because she'll constantly make these World War II references. Like, grandmama, you know the war is over, right? You know? And she, by the way, she has this like World War II box in her house of like, because she was like, when was she born? She was born, I think, 1932. And so she has all the stuff when she's like a little elementary school girl, and it's just crazy, crazy cool stuff. And but you know, so I got to, and also talking to her helped improve my Japanese because I had to like really think about
sort of
stuff.
force yourself.
Yeah, and you know, she taught me about, you know, the flowers and the thought behind it, of where you're trying to express something, like something beautiful, or you're trying to, like, so for example, she asked me one time, like, do you have any brothers and sisters? Like, yeah, I got like 2 older brothers and an older sister. And so we were doing this one arrangement, and she said, okay, try to imagine this is you, this smaller flower is you, the taller one is your older brother, the tallest one is like your sister, and try to imagine that they're the faces, right? And you're trying to, you know, express like this family kind of portrait through flowers. And then at one point I kind of thought, what if you made like icons through flowers in a weird way? Like, I don't know how to articulate it, but it's like, you could have these, you know, different flowers to express different things.
Yeah, how could you make it basically an Orthodox? Yeah, that's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, like we did this one.
Sort of appropriate.
Appropriate
art for Orthodoxy.
Right.
Yeah. Which is going to lead me into the biggest thing. So one day, I'm sitting there with her, chilling at her house, just kind of, you know, randomly just going to her kitchen, taking sandwiches out of her refrigerator, you know, like you do when you go to your grandmama's house. It's actually gotten to the point where, like, I've now, because I've moved from Fukushima to closer to Tokyo about 3 years ago, and that really hurt me to move because of her, because I was like, I could not, like, even after moving here, like, I couldn't find another teacher. Like, I can't get another teacher. I mean, the style of, well, a teacher for what? I'll get that in a minute. But like I can't leave her. Like, that's grandmama. You know, that's grandmama. I can't leave grandmama. But then, you know, so I would still make an effort to go to see her once a month. But then eventually I found a different teacher for what I do now. And after that, it kind of showed, like, no, it's essentially like we family. Because, like, it doesn't matter if I'm her student now or not. It's like we already had that connection. Like, she told me last time, it's like, yeah, Justin, I was expecting you to come to the house, but like you couldn't make it because timing, like we couldn't, you know, something happened, we couldn't actually meet up that time. And she's like, I had made the sandwiches you liked, but you couldn't come over, so I gave them to the hairdresser. That was because she's like, you know, she called me, like, I said, hey, grandmama, what you doing? She's like, I'm at the salon. I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, yeah, well, sorry, we can't meet. And then later on, she told me she made some sandwiches, but we couldn't meet. And like, I was like, and so, like, I basically, I got 2 grandmamas. I got my grandmama in America, who I love dearly, and I got a little Japanese grandmama here, who I love dearly. It's amazing.
That's cool.
But what you mentioned, the appropriating things, and I'm dead serious. Y'all can cut me off anytime.
Yeah, well, kind of to, so I guess, you know, you had a sort of indescribable love for Japan, and then various things that happened that, you know, can be attributed to God's providence or to his helping you get there and revealing to you what exactly it was that brought you there. You know, I guess this kind of changes a little bit, although I think the subject, but although I think it's definitely obviously it's related to you. What is the sort of the state of Orthodoxy in Japan, or would you rather not go to that yet?
Struggling. But growing.
Really?
In some ways, growing in some ways. It's struggling because it's extremely small.
Right.
And it has basically stayed extremely small since the time of Saint Nicolai. So if you ever do research on the church in Japan, you'll constantly hear that, you know, up until the time of his death, Saint Nicolai helped establish all these churches and seminaries and, you know, all these schools, and you know, tens of thousands of people were you know, brought into the church. Now, I think you'll hear something like, what is it like? Was it 30,000 or 10,000? It's not. It's like if you actually go by going to the church, would probably be nowhere near that.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, the church that me and my wife go to, the one in Fukushima, is like 10 people
Mm-hmm.
on a good Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
When it meets it meets only once a month, because there's the priest, but he comes from Sendai, which is like 2 hours or so northeast of 2-3 hours northeast of Fukushima, and so he serves with the archbishop there, and serves at the church in Fukushima once a month. But also he has another church he has to go to.
Wow.
So it's extremely small.
Right.
And it's a lot of old people, like
Right.
not that many young folk. Even
Yep.
if you look at like the main cathedral in Tokyo, I was talking to some folk and they're like, yeah, you have this kind of like, what do you call it? Like a revolving door effect, where you'll have some people be like 10 or like they'll get baptized or something, like 10 or 15 years or so, and then they'll come and then they'll stop coming. And then, like real talk, the Japanese church is struggling because it's extremely small.
What do you think could be done to help that happen? To help it grow, I guess.
Well, some of the things that are happening now, like one of the priests, Father Stephen, up in Hokkaido, he is attempting to kind of do like his own podcast.
Yeah.
Well, kind of like just like recording kind of some of the homilies, and also some of the other churches, like the church in Osaka. Shout out to Matushka Maria, because she and her and Father George are working really, really hard to translate things.
Right.
So the church in Osaka, they have like a little group and they're working really hard to translate things. And one of the other groups in Shizuoka, like in West Japan, they're working hard to translate things.
Yeah.
But like with, for example, Father Stephen in Hokkaido, what he's doing now, he started doing like this, kind of like the Zoom thing with another Japanese believer who is currently living in Europe, and who's a graduate of St. Vladimir's.
Oh, nice.
And so what they do is they kind of talk about kind of basic stuff about Orthodoxy in Japanese to kind of share it with people. And I think what the church needs, I don't know why you would ask a person like me that type of question, but it's like, it's a hard thing to answer, I think, because you have to think about who you're trying to show this to, like who you're trying to bring Orthodoxy to.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that thing when Saint Nicolai first was coming to Japan, and he was studying all this European stuff, and then Saint Innocent was like, "Hey, bro, what you doing?" He's like, "I'm getting ready to go to Japan." He's like, "What you reading?" Like, "I'm reading this stuff on French and German." It's like, "Hey, bro, why you reading that?" It's like, "Well, I'm getting ready." It's like, "Well, where are you going now?"
Going to France?
It's like I'm going to Japan. It's like, "Well, then bruh, stop reading that."
So you said it.
This is how I translate stuff.
Okay? No, go on. It's fine. It's great.
It's like, well, bro, stop doing that. If you're gonna go meet the Japanese people, you need to meet them on terms that they understand. By the way, which I have his diaries, Saint Nicolai's diaries, which, oh my gosh, it's like if you're a person is in Japanese.
Are they translated into English? I don't think so.
That's the discussion, because there's a book I got that's about his life that's in English, and I kind of started this like Japanese Orthodox line group. Line is like the Japanese version of WhatsApp, of trying to like gather people together. And some of the people asked me, "Is there like a diary in English?" And we're trying to figure that out. Like there's some translations of snippets of it, but we don't know if there's full. But by the way, if there's anybody who listens to your podcast that deals with like anxiety or depression, it is so refreshing in a way to read through your patron saint's diaries and read him going through that and kind of discussing, okay, I've been feeling really down lately and have this like this really depressed feeling. What is it? Is it like me personally? Is it the weather? Is it this? Is this? Yeah.
He went through a lot. he went through, because it was almost hopeless. I mean, like,
Right.
if it's difficult today, I mean, in the 1800s, I mean, or like the Japanese government was totally, against anything foreign, punishable by death even. So
and towards the end of one of his diaries, because his diary is put into 3 parts, towards the end he kind of has one of those moments, and he's like, well, if I die, who's going to take care of my children? Like the church, right? Who's going to do this after I'm gone? Like, there's no one to give this to. But then he kind of swings back and says, okay, but God's going to be good. God's got me. It's going to be okay.
Right.
Or even when he had one of those depressed, when he had a day we was just going through like depression for like 2-3 days, he said, all right, this will not be my state forever. He says, I will not be this way forever. Right. And I will go to church, receive the holy mysteries, and I'll be good. And I'll be good. But with the Japanese people, it can be very difficult. Like, how do you express this orthodoxy to other people? Because Christianity is still like a thing, right? It's like a thing. It's like, whatever. Because Japan, in terms of religion, has a whole host of options, right? Like, people, like, I was talking to Father Clement, who's one of the Japanese priests who's now up in Hokkaido, and I said, Father, what do we do for Japanese people? Because Japanese people don't have a lot of religion. He's like, oh, no. Japanese people are very religious, but it's just how you think about it is different. Like, almost everything that is done in Japan has some sort of connection to either Buddhism or Shintoism in some way, right? But it's not consciously thought about.
That's really interesting, because I think that a lot of people who watch, they know Japan from outside of Japan, especially nowadays with anime and whatnot. I don't think one of them would think of that Japan as very religious. I mean, other than when right before they eat something, they'll put their hands together.
The itadakimasu. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that thing, the whole itadakimasu is sort of you kind of like giving thanks to the prep of the food and everything. Right. And even Japanese people, if you ask them, they will tell you they're not religious. Right. In sort of the way that we think about it. But a lot of the traditions, like going to the shrines at New Year's and all these things. Interesting. But I think what Japanese people could definitely use is kind of like, to reference Saint Innocent again, what Saint Innocent did when he went to I think the Alaskan area, was kind of said, okay, how can we translate this into a way that you understand? I think when Saint Nicolai started was like, and I even have the book he wrote about his observations of Japan, because I think the first 6-7 years he kind of basically just did research.
Right.
I've read a little bit about it. It's very interesting.
And the opening line is kind of like, my goal is to have the words of the gospel ring out through the whole of this empire, because it's still still technically is, I guess, now, because it's still an emperor, but it's like the ring throughout the whole of the empire. And what I'm learning and what I'm thinking about, and because we're having talks about this all the time in like one of the Orthodox Facebook groups, is like, how do you share this? And there's like, I don't have time to go into it, but there's so much work, beautiful work being put in by people across Japan and some of the different churches. It's really small. Like, there's like 65, 67 churches.
Are there monasteries?
Oh, that's a touchy subject.
Really? Okay.
Yes. That's a touchy.
Well, before we go on, Father Michael, how long have we been going for?
We have been on for about 50 minutes.
Okay, so
another 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay. 10, 11, 12.
Yeah, okay, there's a female monastery. There's a convent in Chiba, which is directly under Russia, and there were attempts made to start a male monastery under the Japanese metropolitan, but that, for a lot of reasons, it was unable to continue, and they're still kind of figuring out how to restart that. But there's one that's the one under Russia. I went there once, which is beautiful. It was an amazing experience, and it's kind of interesting to see, because it's a Russian monastery amidst the Japanese countryside.
And the monastics are actually Russian from
Yeah,
Russia?
two
Wow.
two female
Interesting.
monastics. But there's one Japanese monastic I know who's on Athos now.
Mhm.
And I randomly ran into him one day
Where is
in
he?
Sendai. He's now in Athos. Was it
Do you know what?
Everon?
Iveron.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. Uh-huh.
I
Really?
think,
He's
yeah.
on.
Yeah,
Nice.
and it's interesting because he was a student of Elder Ephraim,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Many of them.
remember one day he came to my little grandmama's house and we were talking, and he brought one of his books because I after um, I did the Ikebana, I started learning Japanese poetry chanting from my little grandmama sensei, which kind of looks like this.
Wow.
And the reason why I wanted to bring
Beautiful.
this up is because I've sang this for some Byzantine chanters, and they said that it has these vague echoes of
Huh.
Byzantine chant and how you almost dropped my computer, and how you do
I do that.
the vibrations of your voice,
Can,
right?
can
And
we
how
put you on the spot and
oh yeah, no,
ask you to
like,
chant a little bit?
oh
I
dude, I was
know he
hoping
does
you
it
would.
in his YouTube
Yeah.
channel.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, man.
Oh,
yeah, yeah. So like, you know, for example, there's one for Mount Fuji, right? She's like Senkaku Kitari Asobu, right? And I can go on forever about that. And what I learned from doing that is if you ever listen to the chanting, it's like
Yeah.
nan,
Right. I was gonna say.
Right.
Very cool.
and
Hey guys, so Strati here. So a storm took out the power on the building and cut off the podcast. We know that Justin Nicolai was just in the middle of singing to us, but we will continue this discussion with him about Orthodoxy in Japan and his life. Uh, in a few weeks' time, we will bring you a second episode with Nikolai, Justin Bingham. Thank you all. Hope to see you next time.